So going into our speed round topics, we didn't really have a chance to really expand upon during the course of the main show. First that I wanted to talk about definitely would be Sally Yates, the Attorney General, the last Attorney General, rather.
The acting.
Right, who was dismissed by Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with her being dismissed.
I don't either.
Look, she was on her way out anyway, so, like, and here's my thing.
She just didn't think it through.
I don't think that, no, I think she did. I think she did it on purpose. I think she wanted to make a statement, but I don't think that
it was the wrong statement.
Department agencies, that there's a necessity for individual political statements. So, it's...
You can challenge it. There's certain aspects of the executive order.
And I think, and from her own words, what's ironic about this whole situation...
Well, that's what she didn't like. She didn't like the Muslim ban Well...
Right.
That's what it's being called. I don't think it's a Muslim ban,
no,
but
it's a
the travel ban.
She told the State Department not to defend the executive order. And so, she was rightfully fired and replaced for that. Look, she did it, in my opinion, she did it because she was on her way out. She wanted to make a statement that I don't side with Donald Trump. What's ironic about the whole thing, first of all, is that Jeff Sessions is set to replace her, right?
Right. So, well, if he gets confirmed.
Before she got when Obama appointed her, before she was sworn in, she was questioned by Congress. She was questioned by then Senator Jeff Sessions.
Right.
And what's interesting about it is that Jeff Sessions asked her if, and he was talking about Barack Obama. He said if the president, I guess
New World Order, man.
I guess I should turn my phone off before the show. So
watching us.
Basically, Jeff Sessions talking about then the Obama administration questioned her and said, if the president were to sign into law something that you personally or politically disagreed with, is it or if you thought it was against the law or walked on that line, would you defend it? And she said to him, what I would do is I would go to the president personally, and I would discuss this issue with him, and then tell him, either we need to talk about how to change this and make it right, or I need to resign because I can't do it.
Well, imagine that. She's more willing to cooperate with Obama than Trump.
So now that Jeff Sessions, the guy who asked her that question, is about to take her job, so
it's fair to say, though, that that's not the answer that Jeff Sessions wanted. He
No.
wanted to hear, you hate Obama just as much as me, and you shut it down.
I will shut it down.
I will shut you down.
No. So,
that's a little ironic, too, but that was never quite stated. I think that's the way it probably went, though.
So, but I don't have a problem with her being fired, because I don't think that agencies, that federal departments like that, that you need an individual making a political statement. Let the agency make a political statement. Yeah. Sure, let them do their job.
If you really think that it's against the law, say so.
Right. But I don't need to know what Max the intern thinks about, A, B, and C.
Is he 21?
Right. So that was issue number one. I think we both agree on that one.
Yeah.
Another thing in the story this week, which you can set us up for, was
that was definitely the Quebec mosque shooting. So actually, most news channels picked this up right when it started, but they never finished the story. Like, I remember it breaking news on CNN and all that, and they said that there was a shooting at a mosque up in Quebec. And then there was just all speculation without any facts whatsoever.
Right, there were reports that the shooter was yelling Allah Akbar.
Yep, that it was a Muslim attacker, a Moroccan.
Two Muslim attackers at one point.
Yep, and they were supposedly Moroccan, which was totally inaccurate. It turns out that the Moroccan was just someone that was there. Right. Basically ran from cops thinking that he was going to get shot again, that it was another terrorist. And they captured him, and they took him in, interrogated him, and basically cleared him. And it ended up being, I think it was a Quebec citizen.
Yeah, some white guy with a really French name.
Yeah, from Quebec.
Yeah,
what was what it looked like. And basically, as soon as that came out, which was about a day and a half later, because I remember, by then, all main media just completely lost interest, and you didn't hear about it. Which doesn't make any sense to me, because as liberals, there's your story.
Well, and
there's a guy who doesn't look like the right is saying he should look. And I think we are definitely in agreement that that's a terrorist attack.
Yeah, a terrorist attack is a terrorist attack. It doesn't matter what your religious beliefs or what your skin color looks like.
If you target a specific group and then inflict death and terror upon them, you're a fucking terrorist.
So you would have thought that, especially the liberal media, would have taken the fact that this guy is a Trump supporter. He's a crazy anti-government, right-wing extremist dude. Runs into a mosque, shoots 16 people?
Yeah, I think 6 died.
So, but
it's a big deal.
Here's the thing. Neither the left nor the right went back to correct the story. If you go, for days and days and days, you go back and
Phil
look
DeFranco did.
There you go.
And that's why get your news station up and running, Phil DeFranco, because I will be coming to you.
But
most reliable.
It's ridiculous because that still for days the story was still a Moroccan yelling Allah Akbar, and
I think a lot of it has to do with what he said, Phil DeFranco. That it had to do with clicks. I mean, whenever it was Trump was doing his Muslim ban and everything, so that's what was on the mind. So then they can paint that picture. Even the left can paint that picture, and bring in clicks because no one really cares. It's up in Quebec,
right? Exactly.
It's not America.
And it goes back to that earlier point that we made that they're just not accountable because everybody is looking for the story now. So nobody waits for facts; they just want to report on it. So and
then leaving up the inaccurate
that's
information.
That's the convenience of having a once-a-week podcast that doesn't air live. I don't have to get a story up at any certain time. So,
but if you wait a week, you might be called out for it.
Right. Right. So, that's horrible. And I think that and I'm sure we'll talk about it again in the future, but the media has to hold themselves to a higher standard.
And the right needs to hold itself to a higher standard to show that terrorism is a problem in the world right now. It's not just obviously we see a big portion of it coming from this side of the world in the Middle East, but that there's enough homegrown here and in other countries. And another thing to point out is that Quebec is very harsh on gun laws, and they came in with automatic weapons, and they didn't know where they came from. Now, I never found out where they came from.
No.
My guess would be an American source, Minnesota, something right across the border. I don't know. So that's another thing that the right also needs to talk about as well. And now I'm not for gun restrictions or anything like that, but I think it's healthy to make sure that you're taking in everything into account. If these weapons came from America, we need to acknowledge it. We need to try to do what we can to have it not happen again.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I totally agree. So that was definitely something that should have been at least it should have probably been reported more. It should have at least been fixed.
Clarified, man. Clarify. Yeah. You start a story as breaking news and then don't finish it.
Right. Admit
what happened.
When you got it wrong, go fix it and acknowledge the fact that you have it wrong.
Exactly. It's kind of your job.
Right. Because the fact of the matter is, more people saw that Moroccan man shooting up a mosque story than they heard about how it actually went down. So I think the media needs to do a better job there. So
definitely.
So
yep.
Then the last thing that I wanted to bring up this week was an interesting story that only really got a little bit of talk, but I think it should probably be mentioned. The
religious one? Yeah.
So President Trump did the whole national prayer breakfast or whatever.
Calling out Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Other than the shameless self-promotion of The Apprentice.
Right.
He said something interesting. So and I know it's a fake news New York Times piece, but but you can I'll give you more links to it.
They get it right sometimes.
President Trump vowed on Thursday to overturn a law restricting political speech by tax-exempt churches. Potentially huge victory for the religious right, gesture to evangelicals. Mr. Trump said that his administration would totally destroy the Johnson Amendment, 1954 law that prohibits churches from endorsing or opposing political candidates at the risk of losing their tax-exempt status. And then it goes on and on and on and on.
Right.
And, I'll put that link down there in the comment section. But I think that pretty much sums it up. And I don't like it personally. And it's not that I don't... It's like, I'm not... Look... I know that it's fun to say that Christians are disparaged, except if you are an Iraqi Christian, you can still travel here. That's interesting. That doesn't make it a Muslim ban. But I do think that church and state being separate is an important foundation to.
I would agree. For
Constitution.
me, when it comes to this particular thing, now I don't agree with churches having tax exempt status. I think that if you're bringing in a certain amount of revenue, I think you should be able to be susceptible to taxes. However, I don't like this part of it. Like, I don't like that this Johnson law, or whatever it was called, comes out and says that you can't support a presidential candidate or you can't support a political party, or then you get hit with taxes.
You can.
I don't like that. Everyone should be able to.
And I don't think that.
I don't see why not. If it's let's
as
be
a
honest,
church, because you're speaking for your entire
you have a
congregation, right?
Yeah.
So
that's my point.
Right. So if I'm that guy in the congregation that doesn't think that homosexuality is bad, that doesn't agree with the church,
you can
doesn't
leave the
want
congregation, and then he can deal with that on his own terms. So I think that that's something that the pastors and the clergy guys, whoever's running the show, they need to weigh those options, but they should have the option to say, this candidate holds my interest and the interest of my congregation, and so I'm going to vote for them. Because that's what people do. People are always going to vote for their own self-interest.
No, they can vote for them. I think the issue comes
and give money
into
to it to see that happen.
telling their congregation who to vote for.
Well, their congregation can leave if they want. They're not sticking around for no reason. You know, if they disagree, then you leave.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
It's not Scientology.
That point.
Yeah,
I do think that but I do think it challenges a fundamental.
No, I don't agree with them having tax exempt status. But I also don't agree with them losing their tax exempt status because they want to try to help their congregation politically. I have a problem with that because I think that in America everyone should be able, even religious groups. And like I said, the left unfortunately has this problem where they're for every single religion to have more rights and more political power except for Christians.
So then
that seems to irritate them.
Then by that argument, do you support Citizens United, which is essentially the business version of what we're talking about?
Yeah. Now, I think that there should be a tamper on it so that you can't do unlimited type of funds that go way over the line where you're donating millions and millions and millions of dollars and basically buying elections. I have an issue with that, but it needs to be broader. It needs to include everybody.
Do you think then,
not just businesses?
So
religious.
Then Pat Robertson can't put millions of dollars.
I would not want to, but I don't think that they should lose tax exempt. I think they should lose tax exempt status just because they should.
Well,
I think
you realize that Pat Robertson will put millions of dollars in without that regulation in there.
Right.
And by Donald Trump's own words this week, for every regulation that we create, we need to lose two of them. Which
I don't
super genius because we've never seen deregulation lead to bubbles that lead to recessions.
Well,
I can't think of two of them that happened in the last 15 years.
Obviously, they need to be smart ones, and I think that I'm not opposed to regulating the amount of tax dollars and tax revenue that comes from churches. I don't think this is the right regulation. I think this kind of stands in the way of their own rights, as opposed to
they're constitutionally they are separate, so they don't have rights.
That's fine, but I still view them as citizens, and it still is a group.
They're not citizens, though. They're entities.
Well,
a church is an entity. We're not talking about. Look, do
you think that Mosque should be able to support the candidate that best serves their needs?
No, I don't. I don't think that any religious organization should be allowed to put funding it. You can have a say in it at the ballot box.
Yeah. But still,
so you don't have to put millions of dollars into it, because then what you do is you and I don't like slippery slope arguments, but I have to make it
a slippery slope
for the purpose of the right should realize that, like, now once you've done that, when mosques start doing that, now you're looking at the furthering of your Sharia law. And you're going to be afraid of that.
They should have that right to do that. I just do. I think that if you're a religious organization, we do support religious freedom.
Which, by the way, Sharia law is not happening in the United States.
You'd be surprised in other areas where it's on the rise. So we need to. I definitely think that we should continue to say we're against it. But
yeah, sure. I don't think it's bad to say that we're against it.
Right.
I also think that it's never going to happen or become.
Well, hopefully it won't.
Law.
Yeah, hopefully it won't. But I get enough people who think that it should, and it will. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Who thinks that it should?
People who like Sharia law. There are these dudes. It's not like there's no one in that camp. They just don't happen to be here right now.
Right. So I don't know. I just personally, I'm trying to disparage those congregations. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't have
And like
a problem.
I said, I don't think they should have tax exempt status. You should be taxed.
Yeah, they absolutely
But I also think
should.
that you should be able to spend your congregation's money in political elections to further their own needs. I also think that it should be capped in a certain way. So I think there should be a lot of regulating going on. Just not the ones that are on right now.
Here's my compromise. If that's the scenario, I'm good with it. But I think that at the same time that you eliminate something like the Johnson Amendment and you say that, okay, we're not going to penalize you for political
stating your
views, then you also simultaneously say, but you're not tax exempt. You have to buy into this status.
I mean, that's almost essentially what they would be doing by saying you lose it. Then you basically have to buy it. And I think it should be a right. I just also think that your tax exemption should not be a right.
Yeah.
So I think that it should be a right that you should be able to, if you're a religious organization, to be able to put your money behind a certain candidate. I also think it's a right that, if you're making money off of our citizens,
I disagree.
And you're
I agree with the point that I think they should not be tax exempt, whether you're talking about a temple, a church, or a mosque.
Yeah, I think we agree. I just think that we're arguing semantics and we don't agree on the exact way that it would be done. But I think we agree.
I think we could come to that compromise. But I think as it's worded, but at the National Prayer Breakfast, I can't get behind abolishing that amendment without the tax exemption being taken off the table. So
that's what we need to senators and congressmen that are going to actually
if that
fight
happens, then I can meet you in the middle there. But I'm not willing to say, yeah, cool, let's not penalize them for political views if we're still giving them the tax benefit. So that's kind of what I think on that one. So
yep.